That's the beauty too, is once you start building up this compound effect, you're also building up momentum. And
Yep.
the other visual there is when we talk about compound interest monetarily, it's a beautiful
Yep.
exponential curve.
Yep.
And the same is true whether you're thinking about impact, whether you think about health, whether you think about money, and a lot of aspects of your life, that compound effect can benefit you and it can be a negative.
This is Better Wealth with Caleb Guilliams. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Better Wealth podcast, where we break down thoughts, ideas, and concepts from around the world to help you live a more intentional life. And we talk a lot about the principle of compounding. It's really, compound interest is very simple. You need something over time that grows, okay? And it's math, and it's a really powerful thing over a long period of time. We talk about most people not taking advantage of compound interest. But in our theme, and after talking to people, and we just see this constant thing come up over and over and over again, is people are not being consistent. And if you are consistent over time, it's going to compound. Just look at this podcast and YouTube, for example. Like, we are committed to consistency, and we are committed to upping our game, but we're going to be consistent. We've already seen benefits from our podcast. YouTube hasn't really taken off quite yet, but we're being consistent in that. We know it's only a matter of time. And so talk to me about this idea of compounding and why you came up with this concept.
Well, the reason for this is I want to talk about how the compound effect, it has way more to do with things other than monetary aspects that we talk about all the time: compound interest, uninterrupted compounding, controlled compounding, all those things, and really think about what is the compound effect in other areas of your life. I think that was a great example of talking about this podcast, about the YouTube channel, of the compound effect of having that consistent content coming out and more engagement and things like that. I think of Jeremy, who you've probably heard on a podcast previously. He ran for, I think, 376 days or something like that consistently. And the struggle with that of, if you're on day 152 and you don't feel like going running, you really start wondering, like, okay, I set this goal, and it's got that compound effect of it gets easier and easier and easier as time goes on. And that's what he found early on, was it was really difficult because, that wear and tear just starts adding up. That compound effect of the health side too starts ramping up, but it also gets easier and easier and easier. And so I just want to talk about this. I like envisioning a water pump, and this actually comes from The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And if you're familiar with an old style pump, you're pumping it and you're pumping it and you're pumping it and you're pumping it. And what's happening is you're creating a siphoning effect, and the water is slowly rising a little bit higher, a little bit higher, a little bit higher, a little bit higher. But what happens if you stop is it sinks rapidly. And so to me, it's a very good visual of whatever aspect of life, where you're trying to be consistent or you're trying to get some compound benefits, is to think of that water pump of every time you do that motion again, or you do that activity again, you're getting closer and closer and closer to your goal. And, I talked about previously of making my bed. That was my goal, is I'm going to make my bed every single day. And early on, it's really hard because you got to think about it. And then
it's not a habit.
It's not a habit. As time goes on, as I do it more, it becomes more of a habit. And then I think I was like 30 days in, and then something happened and I didn't do it. And it's like all of that momentum disappeared. Darren Hardy talks about Big Mo, and what he's talking about is momentum. That's the beauty too, is once you start building up this compound effect, you're also building up momentum. And the other visual there is when we talk about compound interest monetarily, it's a beautiful exponential curve. And the same is true whether you're thinking about impact, whether you think about health, whether you think about money, and a lot of aspects of your life, that compound effect can benefit you and it can be a negative thing.
And also in his book, he talks about you cannot be stagnant. You're either compounding away or compounding towards a goal. And it goes back to the water pump. It's like, if you don't do anything, you're actually going to miss out on all the work that all the good intentions, I could say. The example that comes to my mind is the podcast. We actually, you showed me a picture, and this is back when we were on a different hosting site, of the first, was it like over a year? Like literally no movement in the graph. I'm so glad I couldn't figure out how to see that, in all honesty, because I think I would have been too discouraged, and I'd be like, what's the point of doing a podcast? Like, no one's listening. Like, there were days where maybe 10 people, it was that small, like for a very long time. And then what's interesting, and we changed over to the hosting sites, and we have over 100,000 downloads as of a month ago or so, and we had a couple weeks ago, we had our first 1,000 person download day. which means on one day we had over 1,000 people download the podcast. And I'm like, this is insane. And then about 10 days later, that record got beat.
Yep.
And I just think, and like, and this YouTube channel is a perfect example. And I just think about other things in our life, like even our business. For a very long time, get up at 6:30 a.m., go to bed at 11:30, working on so many things that probably didn't matter, quite frankly, but that work ethic of getting up, consistency, whether it's saving, regardless of what it is, it's crazy the momentum that brings. And I know that we can look back in 3 years and be like, we didn't even know a fraction of what we were talking about. Yep. Because it's an exponential thing. And so take it from someone who's in the trenches with you, and I'm looking at certain things and I want to see results. If you know me, I like things done quickly, but I know that we need to build the foundation, because the worst thing that could happen is if we get something hit. Yep. It's let's do a study on lottery winners. The same thing happens with a lot of people that might get lucky early on. They're not able to capitalize on it because they didn't put in the work.
Yeah, what I want to leave you guys with is a quote from Tim Grover, who was Michael Jordan's trainer. And he said, there's no off season when you're serious about being a winner. Yeah. There's no off season when you're serious about being a winner. And really what he's talking about there is that compound effect. You know, I'm willing to bet Michael Jordan was out practicing every single day to be the best that he could be. And I think that the challenge here is, as we're getting close to the end of 2020, where are those areas that you can be looking at to really increase your effectiveness through that compound effect? And I would challenge you to start now and not wait until the proverbial January 1st, where I'm going to set all my new goals and intentions. It's like my favorite time of year, where everybody says they're going to do all these things and nothing happens. Like, make that time today. Whenever you're listening to this, you have the opportunity to start that compound effect, or to continue that compound effect in other areas of your life that you've already been consistent in.
So if you're watching this on YouTube, comment below on one area that you want to be consistent in, and where you see that it's going to make a benefit long term. There's a whole nother concept of habits and what we're learning about doing that Q habit. But anyways, if you're listening to this on podcast, thank you so much. If you email us, you can email me at caleb@betterwealth.com. You can email dan@betterwealth.com. We'd love to hear from you. And we're also looking for more ideas. If you guys have a subject that you want to hear more about, we want to do the research. We want to bring you the up-to-date what's going on. And we want to be consistent in that. So take care. Keep living intentionally. Thank you so much for listening to the Better Wealth Podcast. It would mean the world to me if you could hit subscribe, leave a review, and share this with the people that you know and love.